Okay, this is a week 5 CIS277. Make sure you've done the reading this week. Chapter 10, Practical C++ slides. Go over that as well. 5, Solo Learn. This one is on classes and objects. Make sure and check all the boxes for classes and objects. Take a screenshot and upload as always. And we're looking at examples here of prototypes this week. In this example here, it's using some prototypes. And when you declare a prototype of a function, uh, they need to contain all the necessary items to call them. So their name, their types of the argument, their return type, it's void in this case. And with these prototype declarations in place, they can be called before they're entirely defined, allowing, for example, to place function from where they're called, like the main, before the actual definition of these functions. But declaring functions before they're defined is not only useful to reorganize the order of functions within the code. In some cases, such as this example here, um, it's required. So because odd and even function, that we'll look at here in a second, are mutually called, there is a call to even and odd and a call to odd and even. And therefore, there's no way to structure the code so that odd is defined before even and even before odd. So in this case, defining your prototypes is required. So let's go and get started on the makeup of this app here. Okay. So the first line of doing our include preprocessor directive, and in the reading this week talks about a lot on preprocessor directives, which in C++ can be used for a lot of things, a lot of placeholders. It was used back when I first started coding for items that were variables that were constant. But today it's used mainly for including another file or another method, like in this case here, IOString. Using namespace standard as always. Defining the prototypes for the functions, which are one's called odd, one called even. Both parameters of the functions are integer parameters. Where it says better defined parameters, one of the things you could do is um, instead of x and an x, it could be an actual name, like int odd, int even would be an example. So let's jump to the functions before we get to the main. The first function, the add function, or the odd function, again, brings an integer in. And if the modulus is not equal to 0, then it's going to be odd. If it is equal to 0, it's going to be even, and throw it to the even function. On the even, if modulus is equal to 2 or equal to 0, it's going to be even. Else, it's going to go back to the odd. And then it goes back to this one again to determine that. And so you'll notice in the int statement, declare an I as an integer first, a do while loop. So it's going to continually loop and say to the user, please enter 0 to exit, or they can enter a number. Please enter a number or 0 to exit. So whatever number they enter in, it's going to go into the I value, the value of I. It's going to call it here in the add function, throw I value to the I function, to the odd function, and it's going to determine if, in this case, if it's odd. If it is, then it's going to return it back. Else, it's going to go to the even. So we'll go ahead and run it. So we'll go ahead and do 1, odd, 2, even, 3, odd, 0, even. And you'll notice it ended on the 0. And it did end on even because 0 is even. So we play it again. We can try a double-digit number. And so it's performing correctly on that value. And so that is an example of prototypes and calling them and defining them as a prototype function before the main is even hit, is what I suggest. So for your homework this week, you're going to do lesson 5. After you complete it, make sure and submit below done. If you have any extra credit, make sure and tell me what those extra credit was. I'll go ahead and click on this and go into that. So I have in here, you're going to write a program that will prompt the user to choose the appropriate choice from 1 to 5, add, subtract, multiply, divide, modulus. Then it's going to ask the user to input 2 integers values for the calculation. So if they enter in 1 choice, which is add, and they enter in separated by space 12 and 15, it's going to come back with 27. They continue yes, and it'll continue on until they're done. If they say anything but y, uppercase or lowercase, it's going to end the program. Here's an example here on just calling a function and putting it in a loop for an answer from the user. The one we just went over. So this will be going all day long until we tell the compiler, in this case, instead of a Y or a Y for yes, it's 0 to exit. So in this example here, you're going to be bringing a menu in, so there'll be a major formatting for cout, not major, but be some formatting for cout. Initially, a cin for the choice, and you'll need to plug that into a variable. After this cin, then you'll call it or send it to your function to determine which one of these were chosen, 1 through 5, and continue on. Once it's finished, again, you can submit it, make sure to put your name and date on this, and then you're done with week 5 assignment. Review questions from Chapter 5 or Chapter 10, Practical C++. Answer those. And then, as always, you have a discussion question. One last thing I'll mention is at the bottom of or the top, the solutions. When you go there, I have updated up through week 4, which we just finished. And it has in there the example for week 4 on entering a constant string, entering a string and then breaking it apart to determine so if we enter in here, for instance, Conkle, number of words is 2. If I enter in here Chuck, run it again. Oh, I'll put a text up in here. Now, what if I enter in multiple spaces? The way this works now is it's taking and declaring in as a constant an array variable called count. It's a constant character string, and I'm asking please enter a string. They input that string. The user inputs a string input. In the CN, I'm using for the CN the input string with a get line. Here I'm actually taking the input.c underscore string, and here I'm converting the string to a character on this line here. Next line, I'm actually getting ready now to send that character string to the function count. Let's look at that one. In the function count, it's bringing in a constant character array, declaring a char int word 0, creating a temp char for the length of the string. So whatever length that string is, it's going to find it. Then here it's going to do what's called a create char from a constant. It's going to be a copy basically from whatever string it was entered here into a copy string. Then here the strtok function takes two arguments, str and delimiter. This function finds a token in the string pointed to the strtok. The pointer delim points to the separator characters. In this case, the separator characters I want to delineate is the spaces that the user puts in between the name. And what this is going to do is it's going to take and eat up any spaces but one. It's going to leave one of them in there in between each one of the words. Then in the while loop, it's while the point is not equal to null, it's going to continually give a word count one by one, because this is breaking apart that string regardless of the length of spaces, how many ever white spaces they put in there. It could be 100 of them. It's going to bring it down to one each time in between each word. And then you'll notice here after the word count is incremented, the point here is also updated with a null, the null word, empty quotes, meaning it's eating all of the nulls within that word instance. So if it has the name Chuck, and it's going to eat up all the spaces here within after Chuck space until it gets to an area that's not a character that's not null, which in this case is going to be K. Then it's going to end the while, go back to the top, and now count word 2. So the word 1 would be Chuck with all the spaces here. It would eat them here. It would end it, come back, and so let's go ahead and run this real quick. I've got the multi-space, and you'll notice here, even with all the spaces here, it only comes back with a string of 2. Again, the power in this one that does all the hard work is this strtok, which is 2 arguments, a string argument and a delimiter argument to determine what is available in that string and to eliminate it. So I hope that helps. Thanks for turning in your work. If you've had any late work yet to do, please let me know. If you need any help, let me know. Shoot me an email. Otherwise, see you next week.